in the dusty edge of an old frontier town tucked between pine forests and sawmills in the American West of the late 19th century, there lived a lonely lumberjack named Caleb. Holt, a man carved as rough as the trees he felled and as quiet as the snow that settled. On his cabin roof each winter his days were spent, swinging an axe in the high woods, his nights listening to the wind move through the timber. And though he was known as honest and steady, he was also known as alone, because the frontier was hard on. Hearts and softer men rarely survived. One autumn a traveling auction rolled into town, the kind that sold everything from broken wagons to stray livestock, and sometimes things that made people look away rather than ask questions. Rumors spread quickly that this auction carried a mystery. A woman kept hidden with a sack over her head, offered not as property but as a contract bride, a grim practice that existed in desperate settlements where imbalance and isolation ruled the square. Gathered a crowd of men with rough beards and harder eyes. Laughter rose uneasily as the auctioneer explained the rules. She would be married to the winning bidder. No questions asked, no returns. The bids began high from men eager to boast, but dropped fast when the woman refused to speak and stood still with her hands folded. The crowd grew restless, mocking, cruel. Some stepped back uneasy, as if the sack itself carried a curse. Caleb stood at the edge with only $2 in his pocket, money meant for flour and lamp oil, but something in the stillness of the woman, something in the way she held herself, like a person who had already endured too much, pulled him forward. When the auctioneer called for the final bid, silence fell, and without thinking, Caleb raised his hand and said $2. The crowd laughed. The hammer fell, and just like that, the deal was done. The woman was led to him and up close. Caleb noticed she was shaking, not with fear but with exhaustion. He said nothing, and neither did she. As they walked away through the trees toward his cabin, the town quickly lost interest, assuming the story would end in misery. But the woods have a way of reshaping endings. Inside the small cabin, Caleb offered her food and water, then turned his back to give her privacy. Hours passed before she finally spoke, asking if she could remove the sack, and when he nodded, she did, revealing a face worn by travel but marked by quiet strength. She told him her name was Eliza, and the moment she said it, Caleb froze, because that name belonged to the girl he once knew. Years before, in a river town far away, the girl who taught him to read by lantern light, the girl who vanished after her family lost everything. They stared at each other as memory rushed back, and Eliza recognized him too, the lumberjack boy who promised to build a house with windows facing the sunrise. Tears came, but no words followed for a long time. Over the following days they spoke of what had been lost. Eliza told of betrayal, of being sold and passed along, until she escaped and hid her identity to survive. Caleb told of the years he spent believing she was dead, and how he chose the woods because they asked nothing of him. Trust grew slowly, not from obligation, but from shared history and kindness. Winter closed in, and the town heard nothing until spring, when Caleb returned, not as a joke but as a married man. Eliza walked beside him without a sack, without fear, and the townsfolk who once laughed looked away ashamed, because the woman they thought broken had found dignity, and the man they thought foolish had found love. Their life was not easy, but it was honest, built from shared labor and respect. Years later, travelers would hear the story twisted into rumor, but those who saw the cabin with smoke rising and laughter inside knew the truth, that sometimes the smallest bid can win the greatest life. And if this story moved you, touched you, or reminded you that kindness still matters, then please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories from the Wild West and beyond.